So influenza A, the surface antigens, NA and HA, they undergo something called antigenic shift and antigenic drift. So antigenic shift, and you know what, there's a very nice video we're going to watch before I even go in. It's a very short, I think it's like 3 minutes, before we go into how this happens. Antigenic shift, it's taking a long time to load. This is a major abrupt change in the N or H spikes. These two combine to give us a seasonal flu. Okay, we'll wait for that. Antigenic drift, it's a very slow process. It happens over time. The shift is rapid and abrupt, and that's how we get a new flu virus every year. Antigenic shift is responsible for us having to get the new flu vaccine to cover the different strain of the flu virus every year. You combine these together, and this is how we get our flu virus each year.
Have you ever wondered why you need a flu vaccination each year? Unlike other viruses that are relatively stable, influenza viruses are always changing. Influenza genes drift to create new viruses. This means that the infection-fighting antibodies that your body makes in response to the flu vaccine may only protect you for one flu season. After that, circulating flu strains may change and make the old vaccine ineffective. A new vaccine is needed to match the new viruses. The heart of a flu virus has 8 string-like segments called RNA. These are the genes that encode parts of the virus. Around the RNA are different proteins. The proteins involved in drift are called hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Scientists call them HA and NA. There are 16 subtypes of HA proteins and 9 of NA. From these protein combinations, scientists name influenza A viruses. For example, an H5N1 virus contains hemagglutinin subtype 5 and neuraminidase subtype 1. If a person has been vaccinated or has a natural immunity against the virus, antibodies will attach to the HA protein, blocking it from infecting human cells and stopping the virus from spreading. Without natural immunity, or immunity provided by the correct vaccine, the HA proteins on the virus interact with sugars on the outside of those cells. This creates a bond that allows the virus to enter targeted cells where it can cause infection. When the influenza viruses replicate, they can mutate slightly. Scientists have shown that this leaves small changes in the HA and NA proteins. Over time, as the virus spreads from person to person, these changes accumulate and the virus drifts from its original form. Eventually, the immune system no longer recognizes the HA proteins from the virus, and the flu vaccine becomes ineffective. Each year, flu vaccine is made to protect against the most common flu viruses predicted to circulate among the population. Historically, scientists have done a remarkable job of matching the vaccine to the circulating viruses. Although there is an effective vaccine, not enough people choose to get it. As a result, influenza sickens between 5 and 20% of the U.S. population each year. More than 200,000 people may be hospitalized, and up to 49,000 people may die. That is why health officials recommend flu vaccination before every flu season.
So what do we take away from this video regarding antigenic shift and drift? Or let's start bigger. What did you take away from the video? What was a good summary of the video? Malika? Exactly. So she said when the flu virus goes from one person to the next, it could mutate, which makes it harder to treat the flu virus. And this is where the HA and the NA come in, because the HA helps you grab on, get into the cell, the NA is released, And as the video said, sometimes while it's in the host, it replicates. During the replication process, whenever DNA replicates, there are mutations. That's how we get cancer. When they replicate, it could be something more virulent, something different from what originally came in. Now this person has a slightly different strain of the virus. Now over time, the flu virus will change. And this is what we call a drift. It's a very slow accumulations of mutations affecting the antigenicity of the H and N antigens. In other words, not every time a small mutation happens, it changes the HA or the NA protein to one of the 18 HAs or one of the 11 NAs. Slowly over time, it will change, and that's a drift. If you think about it, something drifting is kind of slow, leisurely, whereas a shift is more abrupt. It's a very sharp mutation. Antigenic shift results in rapid evolution of new strains of a virus. So we talked about pigs being a host for influenza A virus. So if the pig has the influenza A virus, over time, in a short period of time, it can replicate, and then we can get, here we have the pig, and the human is getting the virus from the pig. The shift happens because inside the pig, it replicates very rapidly, changes very quickly, something else comes out. That's a shift. Drift is very slow and over time. What are some ways we can get the flu virus from a pig? Right, it's not cooked properly, we didn't kill the virus, we ate it. How else can we get flu virus from the pig? Does anybody grow up on a farm? No? Yes? Can you think of a way we can get the virus from the pig? Right. Exactly. And you're inhaling all that stuff. So the pig is sick, likely you could get something from the pig if your immune system isn't strong enough. So it's no mystery that we get a lot of viruses from animal reservoirs, pigs, birds. We tend to eat all of these things. So now they are antiviral drugs that block the influenza neuraminidase activity. What does the NA do inside the body? The NA on the influenza A virus. Because it says here that the influenza antiviral drugs that are approved by the FDA that do work, they block the influenza neuraminidase activity. What does that mean? Exactly, it's toxic from replicating in the cell. The HA is toxic from getting into the cell, but the NA is toxic from replicating and opening up, releasing it and replicating in the cell. So the antivirals that are approved by the FDA work by preventing the virus from opening up and giving it a little variant, a little RNA coils in the middle we saw in the video, for releasing those and replicating in our body. So you will still get the flu virus, but you just won't have any symptoms because it's going to be deactivated. Sometimes there are new drugs that are approved. So with the H1N1, there was Peramivir approved by the FDA to treat the pandemic. So the first flu pandemic of the 21st century. The major pandemics occurred in 1918, and last year I had the class watch a movie. It's like a 50-minute movie about the Spanish flu and how it happened and how it killed people. So in 1957, there was another one, 1968 as well. And at the time that this book was published, we were facing the potential of another pandemic. In 2009, there was H1N1, and I think in 2015, we were afraid of the bird flu. But every few years, we see new strains coming up, and people are resistant to them, the drugs aren't working. And there's this site called Syndrome, I forget what it stands for, but it's a branch of the CDC, and they do research, and every day they'll send you an update about, well, H12 and whatever is active in Zambia, and the levels are higher. So they're constantly monitoring the levels of the new viruses. And if they stay endemic in the region, it's not too much of a concern. If we get an outbreak, then you're worried about it. So with H1N1, they actually watched this develop and grow, and more people were having it. and suddenly someone in a different country had it, and a different country else had it. So with H1N1 in 2009, the swine flu influenza, it started in Mexico. By December, 208 countries were infected. And in the US, there were about 7,000 to 12,000 people dead because of the H1N1. So here's the poster saying prevention of H1N1, wash, cover, and stay. Wash your hands, cover your cough, cover your sneeze, you're wearing masks at some point, and stay away from major gatherings. People were encouraged to stay away from like football games and hockey games because it's a very close area, closed and close-knit area where disease can easily spread. Okay, so I think I have an activity. Where is the activity? Oh, this is just showing you different pandemics of influenza. Wait. This is where we will get into groups before moving forward. Here is the activity. Okay, so we've already read, did you guys read the article I mentioned on Thursday? How many of you read the article? Okay, so we will read the article and answer these questions. Since we have not read the article, I will just do a very small portion about the bird flu scare, so that when you read the article, because you have to read it to answer these questions. In 2015, we had the first possibility of a potential avian flu. And the avian flu is one of those viruses from the influenza A, primarily H5 and H7 are primarily the best hosts in avians. So they carry these flus. So we were concerned about it. It's actually called H5N1. And it was 700 human H5N1 infections reported to the World Health Organization in 15 countries, Asia, Africa, in multiple continents. Most human cases were from poultry contact. So either people who were working in the poultry industry, who were harboring eggs at home, or chickens at home, came into contact with them. Especially when you're trying to kill the bird, the blood gets on you. The new virus, there was no herd immunity, and humans were extremely vulnerable because it was not something we had in the country yet, in the world yet. So there was no vaccine preventing it or providing herd immunity. So because there was no herd immunity, we'll talk about herd immunity more on Thursday, humans were very susceptible. And that's why people were dying, because they were getting it and their body couldn't fight it. It was also resistant to 2 of the 4 antiviral agents used to treat influenza. So on the previous slide, we talked about approved FDA antivirals. The avian flu was resistant to those medications. And how are people getting it? Infected backyards, so cleaning out the chicken pen, the poop could have had it, and you're inhaling some of the aerosol particles. When the bird flaps its wings, all the water, all the dust, all the dirt comes out. When the bird is scratching, they poop and then they scratch in the ground, and then you walk there barefoot, and you had a cut in your foot, and there you go. Also shaking his head, spreading the virus all over. So it would enter humans by the nasal passage, also in the eyes, nose, also through your mouth, and it would get into your lungs, and then you were infected with the bird flu. And the strange thing was, even the healthy-looking birds could still spread the bird flu. So typically, when we have an animal that's sick, or with a flu virus, we would see them, they look sick. But with the bird flu, the birds looked perfectly healthy, but they were still infected. Every couple of years, I think like 3 years ago, I saw in food safety news that they were afraid of a potential bird flu outbreak again, so they were recalling eggs from a certain area. But this was very scary in 2015. So people were avoiding chicken. Okay, so now we will move into, this is just showing you H5N1, the bird flu cases in humans, 2003 and 2017. What was their projection? Here we are, 2004. So the highest rates were here in 2015. This is an example of how we see cases just being kind of endemic, and then we have an outbreak, now we have a big spike here, people had it. So clearly, people had this before, we just did not know and they weren't spreading it as much. The issue came about in 2015 when there was this huge spike. So even now, some people walk around still have it. You're just not spreading it. This goes back to endemic versus epidemic. So the coming flu pandemic. Antigenic shifts of influenza A, because the shifts are so rapid and so quick and so drastic, and we have different strains of HA and NAs, we're concerned about a coming pandemic. So the question is, are we prepared for a pandemic? And what would happen if one did happen? So what we're going to do is get into 4 groups, and each group will tackle one of these questions. And I want you to use information gathered from the article that you will read, in addition to just a bit of an intro here on this video. So while the video is loading, you can get into groups of 4, get into 4 different groups. So I think no more than 4 people per group, or 1 group of 5 there will be.
In the next 20 years, 30 years, there will...
I'll wait for you to get into your groups to play the video.
Yeah,
Sure. So you guys have a group list. Group color?
We need a color.
Yes.
Amber.
So we have blue, purple, green, and orange. Amber, the closest to that is orange. You guys want orange? Alright, so you guys need group orange.
We're orange.
Yes. It's as close to amber as I can get. What is your group color? Okay, you guys need blue. Alright. So we have purple and green left. Wait a minute. So let's see. 3, 4, 5. Why do we only have 3 groups? I need 4 groups. I need 4 of you. Okay, so how about we have... Okay, fine. So what we will do is... Abraham, your group will now be purple. You guys will stay amber.
I thought we were orange.
Orange, yes. And you guys...
We're just having a group answer 2 questions.
Right, I want all of you to do one of the questions. Let me rearrange. Do you think it's a pandemic or not? Here. Okay, so let's read. Forget everything I said. So all of you will answer questions number 3. Are we prepared for a flu pandemic? And what can we do to be better prepared? Let me move that to the bottom. Okay, so you guys can remain orange.
Blue.
You guys can remain blue. You guys can be purple. So we're good? And everyone will answer the very last question, the green question. Okay, and where is that video? And I'll explain it again once we watch the video.
In the next 20 years, 30 years, there will be a pandemic, and it will have the potential to bring humanity to its knees.
The video is frozen.
In the next 20 years, 30 years, there will be a pandemic, and it will have the potential to bring humanity to its knees.
New strains of influenza are already infecting birds in over 75 countries. And the way we are interacting with the animal world is putting us at risk. We encroach on wetlands, so wild birds mix more frequently with domestic poultry. Our food trade is completely globalized, and factory farms are growing in scope and size.
With all influenzas, there is some critical moment when a virus circulating in one species of, say, birds, manages to mutate in a form that allows it to get into, say, pigs, and then from there to spread easily between people. We've seen this over and over. It's going on all the time, right at this moment.
Okay, so that was the extent of the video, just a bit of a teaser on scientists talking about the potential of a pandemic and what they are concerned about with pandemics originating and reservoirs and how we're interacting with animals and how that may propagate the spread of a pandemic, or how that might create these amazing circumstances for a virus to just grow and evolve and come into affect us humans. So the activity today, combined with the reading, and you can find that article link on Blackboard. I posted it again this week. It's also in last week's lecture notes, last week's week of materials. You're going to read that and apply that information to answer your questions. So you guys have 1918, right? Are you guys purple? You're purple. So for 1918, or 19, you didn't actually have to watch the movie. So we're going to do more kind of compare that and see what
Since there's so many different strains, I don't know, like the last time like vaccine wise, you get to change your vaccination, how it's made, right? Like, you know what I mean? For like how different strain for it to work. You would think. Yeah, they're spread out.
So guys, the commentary is actually posted under this week's lecture. But if you read the article from last week too, you pretty much get some more information about bird flu still, because it's an H7, which is still bird flu. Either one you read is fine. I'll pull both up. articles. This one was posted this week, the commentary, Pandemic Preparedness and Missed Opportunity, which really applies to what we're talking about. And the one posted last week was the potential for the latest H7N5 flu strain. H7 is an avian flu, so it still could be a pandemic. So whichever one you want to read is fine. But you might want to do this one. Anybody need more time? You guys need more time? Anybody? No? Are we all done then? Alrighty, cool. Okay. Okay, so the first question is, blue group, you guys are blue? Do you think we are due for a pandemic? Why or why not?
I said no.
Because.
Well, the last one wasn't too long ago, and all the very big pandemics seem to be very spread out. Even more epidemics occur, like pandemics don't occur as often.
Good use of the words epidemics and pandemics.